All right, just to confirm for the listeners who I have on the phone here, it is the one and only Benjamin Stanford, also known as Dub FX. Is it you, sir?
Yes, that's me.
This is awesome, man. I gotta say, not too often do I get to talk to a man I listen to on a daily basis, but thank you. It's an honor, so thank you for speaking to me.
Bless you. Thank you for saying such nice things.
Where in the world are you? Just to let the listeners know what's going on right now, where in the world are you?
So I am in my living room in Melbourne, Australia, sitting on my couch with my wife, my two daughters, and my dog.
That's awesome, man. I myself have my two dogs here, but it's 5 in the morning. I believe it's 9 p.m. there, and it's not too often I talk to somebody who's literally just hours away from a different day than me. This has been an interesting thing to queue up. Even I screwed up the time to my listeners. I thought it was 8 o'clock. It's actually 9 o'clock, so I should have woken up even earlier for this, and I'm sorry, Mr. WFX.
Don't be sorry, man. That's fine, man. I'm glad you didn't have to wake up earlier. That's good. Don't worry about it, man.
Let me ask you something. I'd like to do some personal questions first, then we're going to get into some industry ones. So let me ask you this. What was the first album you ever purchased with your own money?
The first album I ever purchased with my own money. Oh, it's pretty embarrassing. I think it was Oasis. What's the Story? Morning Glory.
That's not embarrassing. I'll open up to you. My first cassette tape was Hootie and the Blowfish.
Okay, all right, that's on par. Maybe worse.
I see your Oasis and I raise you a Hootie.
You did.
Let me ask you this. What was the first concert you ever attended?
First concert? Oh, this will make me sound way cooler. It was Beastie Boys. Oh, no. I mean, actually, that's not even true. It was the Italian... Okay, so I'm half Italian. My mum's Italian. I grew up there as a kid. And while I was over there, when I was about 9 years old, my mum took me to this guy called Giovanotti. And he's sort of like... I don't know how you'd explain him. He's like the rap star. Well, he's like the original rap star of Italy. Like the first ever major rap star in Italy. So I saw him first, but I was really young. It wasn't something that I was into. I didn't really know what was going on. But the first one I actually attended as like a conscious individual, like wanting to go to a concert, that was a Beastie Boys gig when I was maybe 15 in Melbourne, Australia, when they were on their Hello Nasty tour.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing, because I specifically remember wanting to go see them at a big venue we have here that's no longer available, and my mom wouldn't let me go. She like talked to some of her friends and then came back and, no, you're not going to see those guys. But that's
that was one of the, and do you know what, to date it's still one of the best concerts I've ever been to. I don't, not just be, and then, you know, had a lot to compare it to over the years, but that was an amazing tour that they put on.
Do you remember who else they were performing with, or was it just them?
There was some local DJs, these female girls dressed as nurses, actually, and they were kind of doing like early sort of. It was you know, like, I mean that would have been 98 or something like that. So it was, you know, it was pretty early. They were playing like sort of electronic-y, techno-y kind of stuff. It was pretty cool actually, but I was too young to sort of know what was going on.
It's kind of
but I just remember the gig was amazing. The Beastie Boys absolutely smashed it.
Wicked. And that sounds, you know, the thing I find interesting is we don't always remember opening acts, so the fact that you remember specifically it was two female DJs dressed as nurses says something about the show. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, totally.
Let me ask you this.
It was pretty cool.
Do you remember what your favorite, you're with your child right now, what was your favorite childhood cartoon growing up?
There's so many over the years. I mean, I think the very first one the very first cartoon that I kind of remember like actively watching would have been Transformers.
Oh, good.
Maybe, like the original. But again, then there's lots of cartoons. I probably watched heaps of different cartoons at that time because I remember the Smurfs and I remember Ninja Turtles was also pretty big and The Simpsons, you know, I mean, but I think like Transformers was probably like the first one I got into, I guess. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because usually when I talk to people abroad, they mention things I've never heard of, and every show you just mentioned is stuff we watched ourselves growing up over here.
Totally. Yeah, I remember, I think there was a Canadian one, what was it, Captain Planet? I used to love that shit when I was a kid as well.
Let me ask you, okay, yes, Captain Planet was Canadian. Let me ask you this, do you know the raccoons?
No, don't know the raccoons.
No, eh? Or okay, and the Smoggies is another one, but I guess you wouldn't know. If you don't know the raccoons, you're not going to know the Smoggies. But there were great cheesy Canadian cartoons, and I love that Captain Planet made his way around the actual planet. That's awesome.
Totally, man. That dude with the green mullet was everywhere.
With the four rings that bring the powers together, right? Or
That's right.
let me ask you this: if you can remember, what was the funniest way maybe you ever hurt yourself in your life?
The what? Sorry.
Funniest way you've ever hurt yourself?
The funniest way I've ever hurt myself.
Yeah, running through a screen
How do you
door,
mean?
for instance.
Sorry, I don't understand. Maybe
No
the,
problem, no
I'm
problem.
just
I'll
getting
explain to you
the
what I
answers.
mean.
So, can you rephrase the question? Sorry.
For example, I was at a party once. Somebody yelled, "Hey, beer's inside," and I went running inside to grab a beer and smashed my head right through the glass door. Really stupid way of hurting myself. Just
the silliest way of hurt myself.
Yeah.
Hurting myself. Okay. Oh, mate, there are plenty of those. I was a bit of a jackass growing up. Like, I was one of those guys that used to get drunk and, just do stupid things to be funny, basically. So there's like a plethora of stories that I've probably even blocked out of my memory. One that really comes to mind, and this is kind of gross, but I paid a dude to rip a mole off my chest. Well, I didn't pay him. I dared him to rip a mole off my chest when we were drunk, and he did.
Oh my God, man! You obviously have a scar to this day.
Well, okay, so it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't like a big brown mole. It was like a skin tag type thing. You know,
Okay.
those
Yeah.
sort of like those lumpy bits of skin that sort of. I don't know, I'd had it for years, and it was just outside of my underarm. It's kind of so gross to recount the story. But I was like, this guy was like, "What is that thing, man? What is?" And he's pointing at it, and I was like, "Rip it off." And he's like, "Nah," and I'm like, "Go on, rip it off." And he's like, "Do you want me to?" And then all these people were like, "All right." And they got right into it, and then he did, and everyone cheered, and then everyone was so grossed out. It was great. It was one of those. I remember that quite well. That was a funny story.
Oh man, that's disgusting. And I hope I didn't cringe any of my listeners. I'm over here like white knuckling because it's like I could feel the pain.
Yeah, I'm 100% certain we did. But yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, here, we'll dive into some industry type questions. Let me ask you this. What was it that first inspired you to ever want to pick up a microphone?
Oh, that's a funny story. I mean, honestly, I never really saw myself as being a singer. I still feel like a bit of an imposter, to be honest. I mean, I don't believe I've got a nice singing voice. I definitely wasn't born with one. I had to learn how to sing in tune. I'm still learning how to, get my tone right. Whenever I record myself, I'm always cringing, and then I re-record things over and over again. I'm not one of those people that just opened their mouth one day, started singing, and everyone was like, "Wow, you got a great voice." Like, I was never that guy. There are people like that, and I know loads of people like that. You just stick a mic in front of them, you record them, and they sound like you've already EQ'd and compressed their voice, and it just sounds mixed when you record. Like, those people are amazing, but they just born with and gifted like that. I'm not like that. So for me, it was like I literally only started singing because in the last year of high school, year 12 in Australia, you have to pick subjects to do, right? I picked music because it was an easy one, right? It was a bit of a bludgy subject. And I picked guitar to be my instrument because that's what I was doing. I was playing guitar, and I just learned guitar because it was just a good way for me to have a bit of fun and express myself around my mates. And I looked at the criteria of like the songs that I had to learn to do guitar and music, and it was like all these, Steve Vai and all these songs that like proper guitarist songs. And I'm like, I'm never going to be able to do that in a million years because I don't practice enough. And then I was like, well, what about the singing ones? Anyone can sing, right? So I just started looking through that, and I'm like, yeah, I'll just do singing. And I literally taught myself. I mean, I just got a singing teacher because that was part of the curriculum anyway, to get a teacher for the subject that you wanted to, be examined in. Anyway, so I did that, and also I was in a band. I was writing all these songs, and I was trying to find a singer to sing my songs, but no one wanted to sing my songs. So I was like, I'll just sing him. I'll learn how to sing and sing. That's kind of why I started singing. It wasn't like I was, you know what I mean, blessed with a great voice, and everyone's like, you should be a singer. I kind of just made it happen. And I was always hoping that I'd find a singer, and I'd be like, the songwriter, backing vocalist, rhythm guitarist in the band. That was kind of like where I saw myself. But it just sort of happened that I became a singer. It was weird. And over the years, that's also why I started playing with effects over my voice. The first thing, I mean, I'm known for doing that, dub effects. Like, my thing is that I manipulate the sound of my voice with effects live, and it was a very original thing, especially when I first started doing it. No one was really doing that back in the day to the extent that I was. And I learned how to do all that stuff because I was a shared singer, and I knew that reverb and delay made me sound better. And that's because I was also not a very good guitarist. And like, when you put distortion over guitar, everything you do sounds better. When you put a bit of reverb and delay over the distortion, it sounds even smoother and better. So I kind of knew that, like, there's talent, I used to call them talent boxes, like guitar pedals and stuff. So when I started putting my vocals through it, it was like, oh yeah, that'll make me sound like I can sing. But I just got really techie and a bit nerdy with it all, and I just taught myself the production side of things from reading magazines. And that's kind of why I guess, I'm like, that's the funny thing about it, like, I'm not really a singer. I just fell into it and like I learned how to make it sound like I'm a good singer, and that's basically the foundation of who WFX is.
I want to address, that was a great answer, and I want to address a few things that you touched on. First of all, I think that you have something that some people that can sing lack, and that's why I dislike shows like American Idol or The Voice, is because these people can all sing. Once you get to the top 10, they can all sing. What some of them lack is soul and songwriting ability. And you have both of those, regardless of what you may think of your own voice. You use your voice to its fullest potential, and you can hear the emotion when you sing. You definitely are very harmonic, melodic, and what you do with your sounds is led to the progression of artists we can talk about today, Katie Tunstall or an Ed Sheeran, guys and girls that have made fame from doing this looping of pedals. Yet you yourself, in my opinion, are doing many more layers, and your ability to harmonize and, like I say, create melody and rhythm and then sing over top is bar none. So it's unique, it's paved the path to many people that have made it, and I'm happy you're still doing it. The one thing also you touched on was your guitar playing and being in a band. My listeners are probably going to be more geared towards knowing you as a drum and bass artist. Can you please tell me about some of your earlier alternative work, I guess?
My earlier alternative work? By the way, thank you very much for the kind words. That's really nice of you to say that. And I mean, I feel like over the years I have progressed and become a much better vocalist and technically and all of that stuff over the years. So, like, I know I've gotten better at that stuff. But, So, anyway, were you saying that what are my influence alternatively to...
Well, no, here's the thing. Is I remember, if I'm not mistaken, earlier in your career, you were in a band. I don't know if you still are, but can you tell me about some of that?
Yeah. So basically, when I was 15, 16, me and Cade, who's my manager, he's been my manager for over 10 years now. I've known him for over 20 years. We met in high school, year 10. And, I was listening to Offspring and the Beastie Boys and, just punk rock and all that sort of shit. Metallica, Faith No More, that sort of stuff. And he was a drummer. He played drums and I played guitar and sang a bit. And we just started jamming in year 10. And I don't know, I kind of like that band evolved and turned into like a bit of a new metal kind of thing. So it's sort of like eventually we got like a bass player and another guitarist and a different drummer. And then Cade started, he wanted to be like Mike Shinoda. So he like got turntables and started rapping. And, we were very heavily influenced by like, I guess, Rage Against the Machine by that point, and Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit, that whole Korn, all that new metal sound. So we were just, we were in a bit of a metal sort of band for a few years. Now I can't even really listening to metal anymore. I was in a metal band. We were doing that for like 6-7 years. And at the same time also, this is the funny thing, I was like doing all of that, but my dad got really into Buena Vista Social Club and Cuban jazz and all that sort of stuff. And so I'd go home and he'd be listening to that stuff, and I really, really liked all of that. So my dad kind of really got me into the soul side of things, because the music I was listening to was quite soulless, you know what I mean? I mean, it was just alternative, heavy rock and and stuff. So yeah, I started jamming with jazz musicians around that same time. So I was in like a jazz band and a metal band at the same time. And then I was also playing, and I was writing reggae music because my dad got me into Bob Marley by playing me Bob Marley Legend and all that sort of stuff. So I had a very eclectic upbringing, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely, and it shows in your sounds today. Let me ask you this then: what was your first experience with the rave?
With rave?
Yes.
Yeah, so okay, that's a cool. I mean, so when I was 17, in my last year of high school, that was a really big transformative time for me. So that's when I was in the metal band. I was also jamming with jazz musicians. I don't know if you've heard of the Cat Empire, but I used to jam with those guys before they were the Cat Empire. Those guys were the same year as me. The amazing Melbourne jazz sort of pop band, I guess. So yeah, I used to jam with all those guys, and then a couple of my mates started going to these raves that were basically at the Docklands in Melbourne, where there were these huge old abandoned warehouses, and they used to set up like real old school techno parties there. And I came into it, I guess, quite late because I was 17. They'd been going for maybe nearly 10 years at that point. So it would have been around 2000 when I first started raving. And so, yeah, that's quite late in the game. But I did definitely, I took my first pill and went to this techno party and when I was 17. And it definitely, I was like, I didn't like electronic music up to that point. I just wanted to go and experience and see what everyone was talking about or what this thing was. And as soon as I got into it, I understood it. I got it. I was like, oh, okay, the drugs are a very big part of appreciating techno, and it was, you know what I mean. And also the euphoria of being in a huge room full of people all sweating and dancing with the strobes. Like it was just like I remember it just blowing my mind. And so I went to loads of raves after that. And then by the time I was like 19, breakbeat started becoming really big, like breaks. So that was like 2001, 2003, 2004. And so by that point, I got really heavy into breakbeat and electronic, all that kind of stuff, basically.
Well,
by the time,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I know, I was just saying. So that was basically my thing. My breaks was like, I feel like I got into techno, but when breaks came along, I was like, okay, that's way funkier, way better to dance to, way more fun, way more bouncy. That was my thing. And then when I moved to the UK, breaks started to die down, and I discovered drum and bass and jungle. That would have been around 2006. That's when I discovered jungle and garage and dubstep and all that sort of stuff.
Let me ask you this then, because I know you jumped around the map a lot. So can you kind of break that down? Like, were you born in Australia, you moved to Italy, you ended up in the UK? Like, what was it that made you move, and when did you do it?
Okay, so my mum's Italian and my dad's Australian. My dad was traveling through Europe when he was 19 in the late 70s, and he met my mum, and they hit it off, and she moved to Australia with him, and they had me when they were 20 years old, and they were basically just kids. And then a couple of years later, they had me, and then they realized they were not suited to each other, so they split. And my mum wasn't happy living in Australia, because Australia back in the 80s was a bit of a shithole, let's be honest. It's really cool now, but it's way more cultured now. It wasn't cultured back then. So my mum was like, I'm getting out of here. So she took me and my sister to Italy, and I grew up for 3 years going to school in Tuscany, in a city called Lucca, which is like 40 minutes from Florence. It's a really beautiful place, but I hated it back then because it was just the opposite to what I was used to. And being 9 years old, it was just a shit time for me in my life, and I hated it. But I look back on it fondly now because I learned a language, I can speak Italian fluently, and I got to experience a whole different culture. Even like if you move to Italy, if a 9-year-old moved to Italy today, it would be a very different experience to what I had, because now with the internet, with YouTube, with Spotify, you're not really missing much globally, But back then, my world was completely flipped upside down. It was really, I had some really interesting encounters. I experienced some really weird stuff, like I was a troublemaker in Australia in school. I'm not a bad troublemaker, but I was just a smarter ass, and that was kind of rewarded with your peers. You know what I mean? Like that Bart Simpson kind of character. Whereas in Italy, it's the opposite. The teacher's pet is like the coolest kid in the class. You know, it was anyway back then. And it was like, so, and I was the opposite of that. So I was kind of, I was bullied a lot for that, for being like the outcast. I was kind of, everyone there was, they were all kind of very, they were all just prissy, you know, mama's boys kind of kids, you know what I mean? And I was like this opposite kind of thing, sort of like reckless kid who just wanted to climb trees and be crazy and shit. So I copped a lot of shit. And they also used to give me shit for, you know, they used to call me American, even though I'm Australian. They're like, oh, whatever, American. Yeah, Americano, whatever, go home, Americano, all this sort of stuff. And yeah, it was just a really weird time of my life. So I left, after 3 years of that, I left Italy and moved back to Australia with my dad, and my mum and my sister stayed in Italy. So when I got to Australia, I started high school, year 7, which is like the first year of high school. And by that point, I was like, yeah, sweet, I'm home. But because I'd already spent the last 3 years of my life, like 9, 10, 11 years old, in Italy, I'd been Italianized quite a lot, and I'd missed out on a lot of the culture in Australia for those 3 years, so I didn't really fit in again. So again, I was kind of like bullied for being different and for not being up to, you know, not being part of the gang, I guess you could say, and not really understanding it. So I basically figured out how to assimilate myself, but then by the time I did, I was sort of coming of age. I was like 16. I was kind of figured out how to be Australian, how to be not misunderstood. But by that point, because I'd already experienced another culture prior to that, and, you know, seen how people are so quick to judge and think that what they're doing is like the coolest thing there is. And I was just like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. There are people on the other side of the world who have a completely different view to you, and you guys think you guys know it all. I don't know. I just became really counterculture at that point. I just rebelled a lot against my peers because I realized that they think they knew everything, but they didn't. They thought they knew everything, but they didn't. So, yeah, I kind of outcasted myself, and that's exactly when I met Cade, who was also a bit of an outcast. He grew up with Indigenous kids in Western Australia, and then he moved to Australia, and a similar thing happened to him. He had to assimilate. They didn't really understand him. He didn't understand them. And so we kind of bonded over that, about being kind of outcasts, and that's how we discovered music together. So, yeah, so by that point, I became kind of like, not anti-Australia, but just anti this idea of what Australian people should be like or how we're supposed to behave. I just kind of became anti-culture generally, in that way, in that westernized culture, I guess. In hindsight, I mean, at the time, I probably wouldn't have been able to articulate any of that or even know what I was going through, to be honest. So, yeah, so then when I got to about 2006, I would have been 23 years old, 24, I moved to Italy again to hang out with my mum, because I realized that getting anywhere in Australia with music was going to be really tough, because the band didn't seem to be going anywhere, and it didn't really feel like, you know, anything was really happening. And I've recorded this. There's so much of this story I'm missing out, by the way. I'm just summarizing. But I basically moved to Italy with a little demo that I'd recorded in my home, in my flat when I was living in Melbourne. And I was like, oh, shit, I'm just going to go street performing and travel the world and learn how to, you know, just basically learn about the world and have experiences, life experiences, which will then maybe translate into a body of work, a body of music that could maybe possibly get me a record deal. That was kind of like my vision. So I packed my bags. So I bought a van and I started traveling around Europe, after living with my mum for maybe 6 months in Italy again. By that point, yeah, like I was 23 or something. And I'm totally butchering this story, by the way. I'm sorry.
No, please go on.
I hope it makes some sort of sense. But anyway, yeah, long story short, that's when I started street performing, traveling around. And, you know, but I was kind of like, I don't know, prepped and ready because I'd sung in so many different bands. I'd been using effects over my voice. And I saw this one guy using a loop station in Melbourne just before I left. And I was like, wow, I need to get myself one of those, which would go along with my effects pedal. And I did. But I still didn't really know how to use it. And then I just started smoking loads of weed and street performing, and I kind of figured out how to incorporate it into a live show. And, you know, I just kept working at it for years and years, traveling around, and I realized when people bought CDs, I was doing something good, and when people didn't buy CDs and walked away, I needed to change that beat or do something different. And so it was just a matter of trial and error, and I just kept traveling around, and I was inspired by the people around me. So when I got to the UK and I listened to jungle and drum and bass, I'm like, all right, I'm going to make some of those kind of beats. I heard grime, I'm like, I'll make some of those kind of beats. And I just kind of was like, just soaking in what was around me and kind of translating it into the loop station. And because no one else had done something like that on the street, it was a fresh thing. It was quite original, and people just dug it. And it just sort of blew up over time on its own.
One thing I find, great answer once again, but one thing I find very unique in what you do is the sounds. Like I was talking before, the harmonies, the melodics. What inspired you, and how did you learn to make all those different noises with your almost using your voice as an instrument, if you will, not just for lyrics?
Well, when I got really into singing, so when I realized I wanted to be a singer, and when I was like 17 or 18, I got really heavily into Mike Patton, for Faith No More, because that was that was a band I loved growing up. I always revered Mike Patton as a vocalist and a singer. And he's done a lot of crazy shit where he uses his voice like an instrument. Is the amazing album he did with Bjork called Medulla, and that's with who's that beatboxer who did If Your Mother Only Knew, that
Rahzel.
most famous beatbox. Rahzel, that's it. So Rahzel, Bjork, and Mike Patton did an album together, like in the, early 2000s, and I remember just being blown away by that. And I also saw a Bobby McFerrin gig from like the late 80s, early 90s or something, where it's just him and a microphone and an audience, and he just does all this stuff without using any effects on his voice, but it sounds like a choir because he's jumping around the notes. He's doing singing like a bass line and a melody at the same time, and just using the room and the reverb of the audience. I don't know if you've seen him do his live stuff, but Bobby McFerrin's an absolute G. So I was very inspired by all of that. And then when I started seeing people, I used to try and learn and imitate that. Basically, that's what I was doing. I was copying Bobby McFerrin and Mike Patton and trying to sound like them. And then when I saw the loop station, and I saw this guy using a loop station, his name is Mal Webb. He's an amazing vocalist in Australia, very trippy, weird individual, like makes very strange songs. So when I saw him using his voice like an instrument and looping in his loop station, and I was already using effects over my voice to make my voice sound like an instrument, because I was jammed. That was my thing. I was known as that guy who brings the guitar pedal and puts his microphone through the guitar pedal. I was in like a hip hop band. I would MC with house and breaks DJs and clubs. I was in the metal band doing that. I was singing in a reggae band. In the jazz thing, I was just singing straight jazz. But I was doing lots of different things, and all of that stuff incorporated into my knowledge, and I was learning a lot from all the different genres from the different musicians. And each band was like, jazz is the best. No, metal's the best. No, reggae is the best. And I was like, nah, it's all the best. It's all awesome. So I kind of was just really eclectic in my taste and my appreciation. And so, I guess you could say the reason I'm so melodic and I know how to layer my voice is because I listened to the greats do it, and it inspired me, and I just figured I could try and do something similar. I never set out to do anything specifically better or change anything. I just was like, well, these are my tools. This is what I have. This is what I can do. And first and foremost, I'm a songwriter. I'm not necessarily a vocalist. I'm just going to try and write the best songs I can write, and then perform it in a way that sounds original, but not because I'm trying to sound original, just because my voice sounds different to everybody else's. Everyone's voice is unique. And so if I loop my voice in a sampler, even if I do a cover of someone and try and emulate that cover as best as I possibly can, it's only ever going to sound like me anyway, because it's my beatboxing, it's my tone of voice, and it's et cetera. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it's quite an easy way to sound original.
Well, I admire what you do. I want to say to everyone listening, you heard from one of the best that he was mimicking the people he was inspired by. I think that that's a a thing that a lot of people that are trying to get to where you are today are somewhat scared of. They're afraid that by copying that they're not going to make it. And it's like, no, some of the greatest learned what they're learning by copying who they grew up listening to. So thank you.
Totally. I mean, look, here's the thing, right? I think there's yes and no. I mean, like, I was copying those artists because I was trying to, if you go to jazz school, they make you learn solos verbatim from Dizzy Gillespie or George Benson or whoever. If you know whatever instrument, they make you learn and transcribe every solo, which is crazy nuts, because when they were soloing, they weren't thinking about some kid writing every note down. They were just feeling it and just playing whatever came to their brains. But now kids, they sit there in these jazz colleges and they literally write down and they notate the entire solo and then learn it, and it's like, that's how they learn how to be like them, you know what I mean? And that's the only way to learn. But then if you're going to write a song or you're going to do a solo, you don't do their solo, you just, the mechanics of your fingers or your vocals or the way your brain works has to be inspired by what you've learned. But you don't want to just literally imitate verbatim when you want to write your original song. You just want to learn it all, try and forget it, and then get inspired to do your own thing, and then those things will come through. You know what I mean?
I do, and I have to admit, as a songwriter, like, I agree with you 100%. I myself am a songwriter, and at times I'll write a song and then I'll start coming up with my melody or something, and I get maybe a quarter way in before I realize, man, this sounds exactly like Soul Asylum. Shit, I'm too influenced by certain songs and they're coming out in my lyrics. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, though, man, like, it's one of those things, man. Like, songwriting is a strange thing. I don't really understand how it works, honestly. I just know that I listen to tons and tons of music. If I was to listen to one genre of music only and write songs, I don't think I'd be a good songwriter. I don't think I'd know how to write a song. I think it's because I constantly listen to so many different genres all the time that I'm like, I'll pull out something that would work over jazz, but I'll do it over reggae. And then I'll think of a bass line that would normally work in reggae, and I'll put it over drum and bass. You know what I mean? And I borrow kind of ideas and concepts and almost staples from one genre and then put it into another genre. That's why my music is so eclectic when you listen to it, because I'm literally just experimenting with, different ideas that I've already heard, changing them a little bit, and then putting them over something else. And then when you write a vocal hook, and then when I write my vocals over the top, I just go with whatever my brain comes up with in that moment, spews up. And before you know it, it just sounds like something completely original. You know what I mean?
I do somewhat, because I think we all write different. Let me ask you this, is the lyrics that you write, because as a songwriter, sometimes myself, there's sounds before they become words. Almost like a whistle going over a beat. When you hear the whistle crew, do, 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 do. Do you have that too when you write, or are there words that you try to formulate into the song? If you get what I mean.
Yeah, no, yes, exactly that. No, so what I do is I'll kind of just like scat noises. Like, if I'm coming up with a melody, I'll be like, and I don't know, I'll kind of do something that's like, just sounds like vowels and notes. And I record that, or I'll just sort of sing a little passage over and over again. And I'll just find the words that happen to fit in with those vowels, because I think the vowels are really important when it comes to melody. You can't just throw any lyrics into a melody and think it's going to work. Like, the vowels are so important. Sometimes ending a note with ooh is going to sound way better than ending a note with ah, and so you have to find the word that suits that, and so that's something that I don't know how I figured that out, but it's just something that I've always done, and it always seems to work in my favor. And then for some reason, because of the way my brain works, the lyrics that come out always seem to have a similar message, I guess you could say. And it just sort of, it is what it is. But yeah, that's what I do. Sometimes though, I tell you what I've been doing recently is I'll literally write in the studio, and I'll actually write while I'm in front of the computer, and I'll go line for line. So I'll hear the beat, and I'll literally just go above it. I'll come up with like I'll start off like the passage for the verse, for example, and then I'll come up with a lyric, I'll record it, then I play it back, and then I just let whatever comes out of my brain straight after that come out, and then I'll find a lyric for that, and I'll literally just build a whole 16-bar verse, whether it's a rap or a melodically sung thing or even a chorus or whatever, by just going line for line, like 2 bars at a time or whatever. And then at the end, I come up with a result that I would never have been able to write if I was just sitting there with the guitar and a pen and paper. You know what I mean? And that's been a really fun way to write as well for me.
I love it. I thank you for sharing inside your head and letting the listeners know how you come up with some of your art. Let me ask you this: what equipment are you using if you're on stage through all these different machines that you're using? What do you got?
Okay, I use a ton of different stuff. I'm always changing it up. But my current setup for my live show is, so I've got a GT10. The heart of the sound of Dub.FX is my effect pedal that my microphone goes into. That is, without that pedal, I don't sound like Dub.FX, basically. I could use any loop station. You know what I mean? It wouldn't make a difference. The GT10, it's the GT10B by Boss. That is the heart and soul of my sound. I've always used the GT series. So I started with the GT6 guitar effects processor. Then I moved up to a GT8 guitar effects processor. And then when the GT10 came out, I tried the GT10 and it was okay. But when I tried the GT10B, which is the bass edition, I realized I could get so many more bass effect sounds. Even though harmonically speaking, the GT10 for the guitar, it's calibrated for, a higher frequency range for guitars, basically, but not for bass. So it sounds better on vocals if I was to sing through a GT10, because the reverbs and the delays, the chorus, the phaser effects, they sound much nicer on harmonic content in the higher spectrum. But the amount of bass sounds you can make with a GT10B is endless. With the GT10, you can only make 2 or 3 nice bass sounds before you kind of run out of, it just doesn't sound good. It's not calibrated for low frequencies for some reason. But the GT10B is like, it's endless what you can do with bass sounds. And I figured because I make bass music, and I only really need a bit of a nice reverb and a nice delay, which, I could sort of muster up with the effects on the GT10B. Anyway, I'm totally ranting now, but the point is I use a GT10B on my vocals, and I use an RC505 loop station for the Boss one, and I also use an Akai Force, and the Akai Force is sort of like if you were to have like an MPC and an Ableton Live have a baby. That's what the Akai Force is. It's like a clip launcher, but it's also got synths. It's got a step sequencer. It's got drum pads that you can tap beats into. You can play chords. You can play backing tracks. It's amazing. It's basically like a backing track system. So anything that if I want to make it, I can beatbox into the loop station, but if I want to actually play some chords or set off some samples, pre-recorded samples, then I just store them in the Akai Force, and that basically is the rest of, the sound there. And then other than that, I just use a SYB bass synth pedal that also goes through the GT10B. That's how I get a lot of my bass synth sounds. And that's pretty much it. I mean, then that goes into a little mixer that I have on stage, which is an Allen Heath Q-Pack, which is 16 input digital mixer with EQ compression. It can record 16 tracks at a time, and that runs all my in-ear equipment. So when I'm on stage, I just send left and right from my mixer to the sound desk, and I mix my own sound a lot of the time, and I mix my own in-ear sound at the same time, and that's pretty much my gear. I hope that was coherent. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. The thing I'm wondering is why you don't install a computer game or something to play with your left foot, since you're already occupying every other part of your body. You may as well just do something with your left foot.
What do you mean with the left foot?
You're doing so much. You've got both your hands and your right foot doing something. The only thing not doing something is your left foot. So I'm like, why don't you do
left
something?
Foot. Well, I do use my left foot. Let me just say goodnight to my daughter. Hold on one second.
No problem.
Good night, gorgeous girl. I love you. Mwah. Say goodnight, Dad. Cuddle.
Baby Kalila cuddle.
You want to get baby Kalila? I'm holding my little sister. All right, there you go. Give her a cuddle. Good night, Sasa. Sorry about that.
That was sweet. I think the listeners are going to love that. But yeah, you get what I'm saying. Your left foot's still free, right? You're using your right foot on your pedal. You got your two
Yeah,
hands
I
off
need to stand on my left foot, bro. No, so I kind of do use my left foot though. I kind of with the GT10B, it's on the floor, so I'll select effects with my left or my right foot, and then my left hand is always controlling the loop station or the Akai Force, and my right hand is always holding the mic. And yeah, I mean, I am using many limbs, and I've been trying to work out how to incorporate guitar into my live show, because that's how I write all my songs, and I record a lot of guitar on my albums. But it's just so difficult to operate like all the loops and the backing tracks, and play guitar all at the same time. I mean, and make it sound good. You know, like I've seen. There are a lot of artists who do that, like you mentioned Ed Sheeran and stuff before. But they use like floor loop stations, and when I watch their live set, like, you know, it's very one dimensional what you can achieve when you're only using your feet with a loop station. I used to only use my feet with a loop station, and then I progressed to using one with my hands, because it's just so much quicker to, you know, bring in loops and play with effects. There's so much you can do. Having said that, there's a guy called Mike Love who's an absolute genius, and he uses only his feet and plays guitar and sings. And but you know, like, he sits down. I like to stand up and walk around. I don't know. Just this is my sound. This is my thing. It's what I do. It's the way it is, I guess.
It's your energy, man. You can't. I get you. You can't perform sitting down if you're someone who likes to perform standing up. Just the energy alone, right?
Yeah, and also because, like, you know, I do a lot of drum and bass, I do a lot of reggae, I do a lot of hip hop. You can't sit down and do that stuff. It just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. Well, as someone who's done so many, like you say, eclectic styles, or say eclectic music, traveled the world as broad as you have, what changes have you noticed in the scene from the day you entered to where we are today? And specifically the jungle drum and bass scene or electronic music scene?
You know, it's funny. I was such a late bloomer when it came to drum and bass. I mean, there are people that talk about 95 as being like the golden era of jungle drum and bass. You know, I didn't even know what it was back then. You know, when I heard Ronnie Size for the first time was like year 2000. I just thought that was techno. I didn't know I didn't know what drum and bass was. I just knew, I was like, oh, it's electronic, it's techno, it's all techno, you know, to me. Which is kind of like what EDM is to people now. Everything electronic is EDM. But yeah, so when I discovered drum and bass, I just first discovered drum and bass with Pendulum, because like they're an Australian drum and bass act. And that would have been around 2004 or 3 or something like that, with Hold Your Colour. And then I went to the UK, and then I realized that drum and bass was really big, because in Australia there's drum and bass, it's not a very big scene here. I mean, it's probably the biggest it ever was now, and it's still quite small. You know what I mean? It's not a big scene. Like, they don't have big nights. Not like in the UK or in Germany or in Italy even. So, you know, and Canada even, I don't know. I mean, I can't remember what it was like. The drum and bass isn't as big as like dubstep from my memory and trap in North America. It's not a huge sound over there. Am I right in saying that?
Today, I would agree with you, but if you were to go to the 2002, or sorry, so let's go 98 to 2004, Toronto was the second home to drum and bass after England. But nowadays, you're right. We're more
That's true. That's true. Toronto still is quite big on drum and bass, actually, from memory. That you're right about that. Yeah, but it would never swept the globe like it has in the UK. Like UK, drum and bass is sort of like, you know, hip hop is to America to some degree. It's like everybody listens to, everyone appreciates it, everyone knows about it. One of those things. So yeah, so I got into it when I went over there, and I just got deep into it. I love drum and bass. I mean, I love liquid drum and bass. I love rugger drum and bass, and jungle. I love a lot of, you know, really deep, you know, jungle-y sort of stuff. I never really got into like the whole neurofunk shit. Like, to me, that just sounded like too heavy metal to me. Just too, it doesn't feel, it's not groovy, it's not sexy, you know, it doesn't make girls want to dance, you know what I mean? Like, I like music that makes girls want to dance, you know what I mean? I like funky, soulful shit. So, I love all that kind of drum and bass. But what was the question? I totally veered off
No,
there.
it's
My
okay.
bad.
We're talking about what the changes that you've noticed from the day you entered to where we are
Oh,
today.
yeah. So the changes in the industry or the changes in the scene?
Let's go both. I want to hear your opinion on both.
For specifically drum and bass?
Specifically, the rave scene altogether, let's say.
The what scene, sorry?
Rave.
Oh, rave scene. Okay, cool. So, well, okay, I've got big opinions about that. I mean, I think for the way I see it, when I was getting into it, electronic music, back in the early days, the good old days, right? It was all vinyl. DJs, I mean, the way DJs would craft their sound and their set, it was basically whatever vinyls they could afford and whatever they could carry on their backs when they go to their gigs. So DJs basically their set, it wasn't an issue to play the same records at every gig, and people knew them for playing certain records and for having certain a genre that they put their money into, that they invested into with vinyl. That's changed, obviously, because with a USB stick and with Beatport, you can pretty much have anything at all times. So all the DJs have pretty much got all the same songs. It's not like the old days of white labels where you would go in and you'd sort of, these are the fresh stack of white labels vinyls. Let's have a listen to there. I'll take that one, and before it gets released, etc. All those days are over. So the electronic scene's not. And on top of that, those labels putting out electronic music back then were all small indie labels. It was never a big label game, electronic music. So it was all very underground, right? So all the raves, all the dance parties, all the DJs, everything was just, it was very communal. It was like very boutique. Everything was small. And then over the years, I feel like lately, I mean, over the last 10 years, it seems like with the invention of this new thing called EDM, which is Swept the Globe, which is such a rubbish name. It's basically, the way it seems like from where I'm standing, it's basically the major labels wanting to try and get in on the electronic music scene, which was never their game. It was always boutique, small labels, and now they're like, well, how do we get in on this? How do we make money off it? Obviously, it's the future. Electronic music's obviously the future. So they come up with some whitewash name called EDM, electronic dance music. And they basically create these massive, huge, like festivals, which are almost designed, sponsored by banks, and completely the antithesis of what rave culture always was. And have these huge, big festivals, and they have these huge, big names like DJs who just play pop electronic music, basically. And now the youth are growing up, the kids are growing up, going to these big festivals, thinking that that's what a festival is, that's what electronic music is. But it's basically just it's just pop. Basically, there's nothing underground about it. There's nothing clever. There's nothing intellectual. It's just really simple crap. So that's basically how I feel about electronic music. Obviously, there's always going to be small pockets of cool underground people trying to push new sounds, trying to push it forward. But the state of electronic music today is I feel like kids and the younger generations are going to find it hard to differentiate the difference between art and a product. I feel like the pop world has destroyed hip-hop for that same matter in that same way. They've destroyed, many genres. And I feel like, I hate to point fingers, but I feel like in the US, where everything is just all about how do we make as much money as we possibly can, I feel like the US is quite responsible for taking a genre, like a cool underground genre like dubstep, and absolutely destroying it. They did the same thing with disco. They've done the same thing with, that's how they've created EDM. It's like that culture of capitalism of just exploit, rinse, just sell. It basically takes art forms and exploits them and turns them into a product until it doesn't mean anything anymore. And the kids have to find a new thing that's cool. There's always going to be those young, cool kids, though, coming up with new shit. So, yeah, that's the end of my rant.
And I appreciate a lot of what you said. I don't want to dig too deep. There's a lot of profanity in a lot of what you said. But one thing that stands out to me in what you said is something like Ram Records, which I only learned recently was purchased by Sony years ago. And, you know, Andy's still the front man, and when you think Ram, you think Andy C. My question to you, I guess, would be if you're a person like an Andy C who at a young age started an independent label and you reach a level of success that a company like Sony comes to you and offers you to pay for your company, do you think it's your, I guess, responsibility as an artist to turn down that offer because of the freedom that you'll lose for your product?
No, I mean, look, not at all, obviously. I think what it really comes down to is, here's the thing, right? If you want to make crap music and someone signs you and you just, like, okay, like when I say crap music, okay, if you want to make watered down, easy listening music, right? That's what you love, and it's all very subjective, right? So you might think it's super complex and cool. Someone else might think it's watered down. If you want to do whatever genre you want to do, if you do that and that becomes popular, that's absolutely fine. You're not a sellout. Where I believe someone becomes a sellout is when they're promoting something that they don't believe in. They're accepting money from people that they don't agree with. You know what I mean? So for example, I turned down, I hate Coca-Cola. They came to me when I first started blowing up on YouTube. They're like, we want you to write a theme song. We'll give you this much money. I'm like, you can't pay me any money. Like, it doesn't matter how much money you offer me. I hate Coca-Cola. I will never help you sell your shit regardless of what the price is, right? And I will never do that. And it's like, if I did that and I made the money, I would feel personally like a sellout, regardless of what my fans might think. Even if my fans think, oh, that's cool, man, you're just trying to, you know, do your thing. I would feel shit about that. I said the same thing to Nestle. I said the same thing to Red Bull. Red Bull wanted me to be part of the original Red Bull studios when it first came out. And I know Red Bull do really cool shit. I know that they've put a lot of money into some really amazing stuff. But I absolutely loathe Red Bull. I hate the drink. I don't want to help them sell that poison to kids. So I said no, and I never got involved with them. You know, and a lot of people think that was a really silly move, but I don't care, because I know in my heart of hearts, I would feel like I'm going against my core beliefs. That to me is selling out. But if I was to write a song that went on the radio and made millions of dollars, and it was a song that I liked, I wouldn't feel like a sellout. You know what I mean?
I get here. Let me challenge that thought for one second. This is how I want to put it: is that you're talking about, in my opinion, primary incentive in why you create art. If you're creating art because you want to make good art, it'll be good art. But if you're making art because you want to make money, it's going to be shit. So why sell yourself out to that? But let me ask you this: if you made a song that you wrote from your heart and the world loved it, and then a corporation came to you and said, we want to use that song, would you still say no?
Well, it depends what they're using, what the corporation wants to use my song for. Like I said, if they want to use it on an advert for something that I disagree with, then the answer is always going to be no.
Gotcha.
But, for example, if there is a product which I agree with, I'll take their money.
I respect that. I get what you mean totally. Like, if it's something that you would back morally and you believe in the product, then you would say, yeah, I want to work with you. But you're not going to use my music.
That's it.
I get you.
For me, it's like, if I use that product and then they want to give me money and use help, and they, you know what I mean? If I use that product, I'm happy to endorse them because I already actively endorse them in my everyday life. But if I actively don't drink Coca-Cola and they want to give me money and use it to sell more Coca-Cola, I don't drink that drink because I dislike it. So why should I? If I took their money, I would feel like a sellout, and I would never do that. You know what I mean? It's like, but if there's, okay, say there's another fizzy drink like Appletizer, for example, right? That's like, you know, Appletizer, it's just carbonated water and apples. I drink their drink. If they want to give me $50,000 to put my music on their advert, I'd say yes to them. But I don't think that's selling out because I fundamentally don't have a problem with their product.
And if Appletizer is listening right now, contact Mr. WX. You've heard him say it already. All right, I got two final questions, fun ones to finish us off. So please just have fun with these, okay?
Go for it, man. All good.
Are you familiar with Mount Rushmore?
Mount Rushmore. How do I know that name?
The four faces carved into the stone of the American presidents or whatever?
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, the Freemasons made that shit. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so my question to you is, if we were to create a Mount Rushmore for the jungle drum and bass scene, what four faces would you put up there?
Well, Shy-FX has to be there, obviously.
Okay.
I mean, Original Nutter is, and I mean, yeah, I think Shy-FX has done so much for the drum and bass scene. He would definitely be in there. Who else? I would put. That's a hard one because there's some amazing living legends. I would put. Ooh, for the drum and bass scene. Okay, hold on. So definitely Shy-FX.
Don't worry, take your time.
Okay. Okay, hold on. What's his name? Who did that song Circles? What's his name again? Forget. He's Adam F. Is it Adam F. that did Circle? I think Adam F. should deserve that. He's also put out a lot of tunes.
Yes.
I don't know, man. It's really tough. Who else? I think. Man, I haven't. Yeah, man, you're putting me on the spot here.
Well, here, and you know what? I'll help you think. You think while I say what I'm about to say, and that is the way I came across WFX for the first time is I think it's MC Moa out of Belgium. I was interviewing him, and he actually mentioned your name as one of the four faces for the Mount Rushmore, and I was like,
wow.
Who's WFX?
Are you serious?
Yeah, and he's like, you gotta look this guy up, man. So that's how I first learned about you. With someone
I know Motta. He's a great friend of mine. I can't believe that he thinks of me like that. That's so strange because he's a good friend of mine, And I love that guy, Motta. Well, then he deserves to be up on there too.
MC Motta, that's it. Yeah, and I had the pleasure of meeting him in Belgium, and then when I interviewed him, he mentioned your name and said that you were one of the most...
Okay, wait.
Go ahead.
Okay, I go on. Caliber definitely has to be up there.
Okay, so we've got Caliber, we've got Moda.
Caliber and Shy-FX. I mean, we need, and let's put, hold on, one more. I've got one more, hang on. One more will come to me. Maybe I'll have to choose another vocalist just to go with it. That's tough. Oh, okay, Jenna G. Jenna G should definitely be up there.
Well, and I can respect that. I appreciate it deeply. Let me ask you this, because I know you came post his mortem. Did you listen to Stevie at all?
To who, sorry?
Stevie Hyper D.
Hyper D.
Yeah.
You know what? I think he was a bit before my time, honestly.
Yeah, he died about, from your stories, he died about 5 or 6 years before you entered the scene, but he's still one of the most influential MCs, so I gotta ask.
MCs.
Did you ever...
Well,
no, not really.
I can't say that I really know his stuff, to be honest. That was because I think he was part of that whole sort of kind of MC style, which I really appreciate, but at the same time, that's not the kind of style that I listen to. It just sounds like a machine gun going off, and I appreciate guys that do that. I know that there's a lot of them that can do it really well, but it's just not. I prefer, I really love, SPMC. I think he's one of my favorite.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
SPMC and Jenna G and Stamina are among my favorite drum and bass MCs. And Mota, I think Mota's amazing. He's an amazing MC as well. And I'm not saying that because he mentioned me, but I also put him up there for sure. And I love Deep. I mean, I don't know whether I love Deep Bridge as a DJ, whether he deserves to be on Mount Rushmore or not, I don't know, because there's so many. I love Breakage, the DJ Diet. Oh, there's so many, man.
You know what? When you say Deep Bridge, I just think of throwing the whole Bad Company crew up. There you go.
Yeah, Bad Company, exactly, all of that. M Beats and
M Beats. Here's the thing I'll say about M Beats. M Beats, I think, dropped off the map.
Congo Natty should probably be on there as well.
You know what? I'll talk to you more about that one after. I've had some interesting discussions about Congo Natty. I love the man. Love to have him on the show. Curious about his influence in the scene. I think it's a very interesting topic. Let me finish off with this one. If you could put 5 items in a vault that would encapsulate the rave culture, what 5 items would you put in there?
This is going to sound really fucked up, right? But I don't think you can have... I know that from my own personal experience, and this is going to... I really don't like hearing myself say this, but I think the drugs have a really important role to play in the rave culture. I think responsibly, of course, but so much of the music of the scene, like I'm not a huge drug taker. I've never been a huge drug taker, but when it comes to the right thing, drugs in the right context with the right music, it's been some of the most amazing experience I've ever had. Like, it's been life changing for me, because I have always believed, like, whether I if I do drugs now, it's actually ritualistically. I do, if I do ayahuasca, things like that. I'm not a druggie, and I never was super hardcore into drugs, but when I did take them on special occasions, when I went to certain raves, I used to go to raves sober as well. But when I took, when I went to certain raves like that, it really did challenge the way I thought about life. It made me look at the world from a different perspective. It made me see different sides of my personality. It made me come out of my shell. It taught me how to dance. So, I think ecstasy, MDMA, I think would definitely belong in that vault, if I have to say anything.
Okay, I gotta ask. Hold on. Let me ask you this then. Is there a specific pill that you remember?
The first pill I ever took was definitely my favorite pill. It was all downhill from there. But, that's like, I think the first acid I ever took, the first pill I ever took, the first joint I ever smoked, they were always the best ones. But no, that's not to say I haven't had amazing times, on other ones and sober, etc. But that's just the way it is. So I think, so for the 5 things that go in the vault, MDMA has to go in there for sure, because that's just, that's my drug of choice if I ever do take drugs. And I'm sorry to keep saying that word, because I'm not a pusher. I really am not a pusher. I don't think it has to be done responsibly, and it shouldn't be taken for escapism purposes. It should only ever be taken for the purpose of enlightenment, and once you learn your lesson, you don't rinse it, you don't keep going back. I want to make sure that really clear that I'm saying that. Second thing I would say is definitely a turntable has to go in there, of course. A sound system would have to go in the vault. Sound system, turntables, and obviously in a mixer. That's one item. Let's call that decks in a mixer. Okay. And records. Okay. That could be the 4th. So records, mixer and turntables, etc. Sound system, MDMA, and me. Not because I'm amazing, but I just want to be in that vault.
You are amazing to open up. I love it. We will see Dub FX. Okay, final question before we let you go. Where can people hear you today, and are you planning a tour for 2020?
Yeah, so I've just released my first single, Fire Every Day. It's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, it's everywhere. I'm releasing it for free. It comes with a free comic book. That's my single, but an album's coming out January or February 2020. And I'm releasing that again, with a full graphic novel. So you can get that from Bandcamp and whatnot. And I will be touring all over Europe for February and June, July. I may also come out to North America. Whenever I come to North America, I usually only go to Canada these days. I want to go to the US, but I just never get offers that are worth it, to be honest. My time's valuable. There's only so many hours in a day. I've got 2 kids and a wife. I don't want to be away for too long. I don't want to just push it uphill. So I don't tend to go to a lot of places that I used to go to. So when I do go there, it's got to make sense. I used to do a lot for free, but now I can't do that anymore. So, but I'll hopefully come to Canada and probably South America at the end of the year. That's where you can see and hear me. And the album will be out and it's free, so check it.
Perfect. And you know what? I'm going to put links down below so people can follow you and find the YouTube, find some of the stuff that I listen to. I'm going to sign off to the listeners, but I want to talk to you for a little bit more, so stay on the phone with me, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
No worries.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, that was him, Mr. Dub FX. It was an honor speaking to him, a wealth of information. If you haven't heard of him, please, like I say, links down below. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, peace out.